Dawn broke over the valley like molten gold spilling across the sacred land. Mist clung to the pine-studded hills, curling through the canyons as though nature itself held its breath. Above, the sky slowly bled from violet to amber, and a single cry split the silencer, cry both fierce and mournful, echoing against the cliffs. It was the cry of the red hawk. Takaya, standing at the edge of the ceremonial circle, felt the tremor of its wings in his chest. The elders said the red hawk only appeared when the Great Spirit had a message for the living. Its appearance was never random. His eyes followed the bird as it soared high, then dipped low, wings slicing the dawn like fire through the sky. The village seer, Nokomise, stepped forward, her voice raspy yet unwavering, echoing across the assembled tribe. "The red hawk speaks," she intoned, holding the carved staff that had guided her through visions for decades. "It tells of a warrior, a man of honor, a man who will face the choice of all choices, heart or duty. Know this, the path he walks will reach beyond himself. His decision will touch not only this life, but the generations that follow. Balance will tremble." A hush fell over the circle. Mothers drew their children close. Hunters stopped mid-step. Even the wind seemed to pause. Takaya felt the weight of her words settle like stones in his chest. He was that warrior. He had known, deep in the quiet hours before the sun, that his heart pulled him toward a forbidden love, one that could shatter not only his life but the fragile harmony of the tribe. The forest around the village whispered with ancient voices. Pines swayed, needles brushing together like chattering spirits. Streams glittered with the first light, reflecting the fire red of the hawk above. Takaya closed his eyes, feeling the presence of the Great Spirit in every rustle, every ripple of wind through the valley. He thought of Ahiana, her laughter, bright as the morning sun, her eyes reflecting the forest itself. She was from another tribe, and yet the bond between them had grown impossible to ignore. Takaya's mentor, Wea, placed a hand on his shoulder. "The hawk has chosen to warn you, boy," he said quietly. "Remember, the spirits see all, and the path of desire can lead even the strongest to ruin. Listen closely to their message." The young warrior swallowed hard. His heart throbbed with longing and fear, each beat echoing the cry of the red hawk. He knew the choice he would face would not be simple. To follow his heart would be to betray his duty. To honor his duty would be to deny the love that had breathed life into his soul. Nokomise raised her staff, eyes closed, murmuring prayers to the Great Spirit. "The red hawk flies twice in warning," she said, voice now trembling with a mix of fear and reverence. Takaya looked up just in time to see the bird circle above. The village not once, but twice, its wings catching the morning light, turning them to flames. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished behind the jagged peaks in the distance. A shiver ran down Takaya's spine. He felt as though the wind itself carried the hawk's message directly into his bones. The prophecy was not a distant whisper, it was a hammer striking his very soul. He glanced at the other villagers, whose faces were etched with awe and unease. Some whispered of courage, others muttered of impending tragedy. Takaya could not speak. Words felt insufficient, fragile against the immensity of what he had witnessed. His gaze drifted to the sacred grove at the edge of the village, where the spirits of ancestors were said to linger, guarding the land and its people. There, the whispers of long-dead warriors and mothers filled the air like smoke from a ceremonial fire. Takaya knelt briefly, pressing his palm against the earth, feeling the pulse of life beneath him. "Great Spirit," he whispered, "guide me. Give me the strength to choose what is right, even if my heart must bleed." The wind stirred again, as if in answer, carrying the scent of pine, earth, and distant rain. Somewhere deep in the forest, an owl hooted, reminder that the unseen watchers of the night never truly rested. And then, Takaya's heart sank as he realized the truth the prophecy had already whispered. Love and duty would collide, and the choice he made would cast shadows far beyond his own life. But the path of the heart, he knew, was never without shadow. As he rose, his eyes followed the horizon, where the mountains swallowed the last glimpse of the red hawk. Twice it had flown in warning, and twice its cry had spoken to him in a language older than memory. "What will you choose, Takaya?" the wind seemed to ask, and deep inside, he knew the answer would demand more than courage, it would demand sacrifice. The red hawk had vanished, but its shadow lingered over the valley, a silent promise of trials yet to come. The morning sun filtered through the dense canopy of the whispering pines, turning the mist into a veil of shimmering gold. Takaya walked among the tall, swaying trees, each step stirring the soft carpet of pine needles beneath his feet. The forest was alive with song, the rustle of leaves, the call of birds, and the murmurs of the stream that wound like silver thread through the valley. Here, nature and people were inseparable, each breath a testament to balance and reverence. The tribe had long been known for its harmony with the land. Hunters learned the paths of deer and elk from the tracks they left in the mud. Women and elders taught the knowledge of herbs, roots, and medicines that healed body and spirit alike. Sacred dances were performed at the rise of every moon, each movement a prayer, each drumbeat a heartbeat echoing through the earth. Children were taught to listen, truly listen to the whispers of the wind, for in those whispers lay guidance from ancestors long past. Takaya's mentor, Weya, had guided him since boyhood. Weya's eyes, clouded with age, yet sharp with wisdom, seemed to see beyond the present into the threads of time itself. "Takaya," he said one morning, voice low and steady, "you carry the weight of more than your own path. The tribe, the land, and the spirits all watch you. Every choice ripples like stones thrown into the sacred river. Never forget that." Takaya nodded, but his mind wandered to a hyena, her laughter as bright and wild as the summer sun on the river's edge. She belonged to a neighboring tribe, one historically at odds with his own, but the heart had no respect for borders. And Takaya found himself drawn to her with a force that both terrified and exhilarated him. Every stolen glance, every brush of hands in secret, was a spark he could not deny, even as the prophecy of the Red Hawk echoed in the recesses of his mind. The village itself was a tapestry of life. Elders sat beneath the shade of great pines, recounting stories of warriors and tricksters, of the Great Spirit and the balance of the elements. Women gathered near the river, braiding hair and weaving reeds into baskets, singing lullabies that carried the wisdom of generations. Children ran through the clearing, chasing one another, their laughter a melody as pure as the mountain streams. And everywhere, the smell of smoke from early fires mingled with the scent of pine and earth, grounding the tribe in the sacred rhythms of life. Takaya paused at the edge of the hunting grounds, observing a group of young men practicing. Their movements were precise, learned from years of discipline and respect for the creatures they hunted. The ritual reminded him of his duty, the responsibility he bore not only to protect his people, but to honor the spirits of the animals who gave their lives for sustenance. Yet the pull of Ayana remained, a weight in his chest that neither ceremony nor discipline could silence. Even as he wrestled with these thoughts, Takaya sensed another presence in the village. Kichi, a warrior known for his cunning, watched him from the shadows of the lodge. Kichi had always coveted more than just glory. He hungered for control over the tribe's fortunes and secrets, and he had long taken note of Takaya's growing connection with Ayana. The subtle glint in Kichi's eyes hinted at schemes yet to come, a shadow waiting patiently behind every smile and respectful bow. That evening, under the veil of twilight, Takaya slipped silently from the village, moving toward the dense forest where the river curved beneath ancient oaks. The scent of moss and damp earth filled the air, and the cries of distant owls punctuated the quiet. He had agreed to meet Ayana in secret, their love too dangerous to be witnessed by prying eyes. Each step forward was a gamble, each rustle of leaves a reminder of the fragile balance he threatened to upset. And then, Ahead, he saw her Ayana, her dark hair catching the last rays of sunlight, her eyes reflecting both mischief and concern. She stepped lightly along the riverbank, carrying a small bundle of herbs and flowers, and offered him a smile that made his heart ache with longing. "Takaya," she whispered, voice barely carrying over the soft murmur of the water. "You came." He reached her, heart hammering against his ribs. "I could not stay away," he said, his hand brushing hers, their fingers intertwined instinctively, a simple touch charged with the weight of forbidden devotion. For a moment, the world narrowed to the two of them, the gentle flow of the river, the quiet sigh of the forest, and the secrets they shared. But even as they spoke in hushed tones, Takaya felt a movement in the periphery, a shadow slipping between the trees. His pulse quickened. Someone or something was watching them, unseen yet unmistakably present. He tensed, hand gripping Ayana's arm, eyes scanning the underbrush. "Do you feel it?" he whispered, breaths shallow. She nodded, fear and curiosity mingling in her gaze. "We are not alone," she said softly. A chill ran down Takaya's spine. The prophecy, the warnings of the Red Hawk, the stories Weya had imparted, they all came rushing back, like a storm building on the horizon. The forest, so familiar and comforting moments ago, now seemed alive with hidden eyes and quiet menace. And there, just beyond the flickering light of their small fire, a shadow shifted between the trees. Silent, patient, and deliberate, it watched. Then Takaya's grip on Ayana tightened, but he did not speak. The forest held its breath, the river murmured a warning, and the shadow remained unseen, but undeniably present. The path of the heart is fraught with peril, Takaya thought, remembering the seer's words. And now, the first consequences of his forbidden love were already creeping closer. The shadow did not move closer, nor did it retreat. It waited, blending with the trees, silent yet watchful, an unseen witness to a love that might ignite the flames of generations. Dawn had barely kissed the mountaintops when Takaya was summoned to the sacred circle. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and the first rays of sun glinted on the painted faces of the hunters gathered around the central fire. Today, he was to lead the sacred hunt, a responsibility reserved for those deemed brave and honorable by the tribe. The hunt was more than survival, it was a ceremony, a dance with nature, and an offering to the Great Spirit. Takaya bowed to the elders, feeling the weight of their eyes upon him. He knew the tribe relied on his courage and skill. A hunter's failure could leave the village hungry, disrespect the spirits, and weaken the balance that had always protected them. But his heart ached for another responsibility, one forbidden, one that pulsed with the danger of desire. Ayana waited for him in the forest, a secret ceremony they had planned under the veil of twilight, a moment to honor their love away from the eyes of the elders. As he strapped his quiver and hefted his spear, the forest seemed to stir unnaturally. A low growl rolled through the pines, deep and resonant. Takaya froze. From the shadows of the towering trees, a wolf stepped into the clearing, fur shimmering with the ethereal glow of dawn. But this was no ordinary wolf. Its eyes, amber and knowing, seemed to see straight into Takaya's soul. And then, with a voice as deep as the forest itself, it spoke. "Takaya," the wolf intoned, "the path of the heart is alluring, yet perilous. To abandon your duty is to awaken shadows that will haunt more than your days alone. Love may warm your spirit, but it will chill the lives of those who rely on you. Do you choose desire over balance?" Takaya's breath caught. Every instinct told him to run, to flee into the forest toward Ayana, to grasp at the fleeting warmth of love, but the wolf's words were carved into his bones. I do not know if my heart is stronger than my honor," he whispered, voice trembling. "The spirits do," the wolf replied, its eyes softened, "and they have already seen your choice before you have made it. Remember, balance is a fragile gift. Once broken, it may not be mended for generations. The wolf vanished into the trees as silently as it had appeared, leaving Takaya with only the rustle of leaves and the distant call of a hawk. He gripped his spear tighter, the prophecy echoing in his mind. Duty or love. Duty or love. The words clanged in his head like the beating of ceremonial drums, a rhythm he could not escape. As the hunters began to move toward the high meadows, Takaya's resolve wavered. He stepped forward, then stopped. His eyes drifted to the sacred grove, where the shadows of Ayana awaited him, to the spot where the river curved and whispered promises of safety and secrecy. His heart pulled him like the current of the stream, relentless and consuming. Finally, with a trembling exhale, he turned away from the hunting party and vanished into the undergrowth, his movements silent, deliberate. The forest closed around him like a velvet curtain, swallowing the familiar scent of the village and the smell of pine smoke. He felt the thrill of defiance mixed with terror, every rustle of leaves a potential witness, every snapping twig a herald of consequence. Hours later, he arrived at the riverbank, where Ayana waited. She rose as he approached, eyes wide with relief and longing. "You came," she said, voice barely a whisper over the lapping water. "I could not stay," Takaya admitted, his gaze softening. "Not for another moment. I had to be here with you." For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, and the world narrowed to them, two hearts beating in tandem beneath the watchful canopy, wrapped in the fragrance of wet earth and blooming wildflowers. They performed their private exchange of words, a promise of devotion, a quiet vow that they would be together no matter the cost. But as their hands met, the sky darkened suddenly, as if the Great Spirit had drawn a curtain across the sun. Winds rose with alarming speed, whipping through the trees and sending leaves swirling into chaotic eddies. The river swelled, rushing faster against its banks, and the distant rumble of thunder rolled through the valley like a warning drumbeat. Takaya looked up, fear and awe mingling in his chest. "Nature does not favor our union," Ayana whispered, clutching his arm. Lightning split the sky in a jagged flash, illuminating the sacred grove behind them. A massive oak, older than any living memory of the tribe, shuddered as if struck from the heavens itself. Its branches groaned under the assault, and Takaya felt the pulse of the prophecy thrum in his bones. The red hawk's warning, the wolf's counsel, and the words of the elders all converged in that moment. The consequences of his choice were no longer a distant shadow, they were here, in the rising storm and the trembling tree. He grabbed Ayana's hand, pulling her close as rain began to fall, cold and unrelenting, drenching them both. The sacred grove, their sanctuary, had become a theater of nature's wrath, a mirror reflecting the imbalance that his love had caused. Every bolt of lightning, every crack of thunder, was a reminder that duty ignored could summon calamity far beyond a single heart's desire. Takaya's mind raced. He had chosen love, as the prophecy had foretold. But the first signs of the price had already begun. The storm was a message from the spirits. Balance had been broken, and now they would test the strength, courage, and endurance of all involved. And then, as he looked into Ayana's eyes, seeing both fear and trust mirrored there, a deep, resonant thought settled in his heart. The prophecy was closer than he had ever imagined, and the ripple of consequences would touch lives beyond his own, perhaps for generations to come. Lightning struck the ancient oak once more, shaking the forest with a deafening roar. The red hawk's prophecy, the wolf's warning, the elders' counsel all seemed to converge at that single moment, heralding the storms yet to come. Takaya realized that the choice of the heart might demand more than he or anyone could endure. The morning after the storm, the valley lay drenched and uneasy. Clouds hung low, a heavy gray blanket over the whispering pines, and the forest exhaled a damp, earthy scent. Takaya returned to his village, drenched from the previous night, hoping the hunters could resume their sacred work. But a sense of imbalance clung to the land, an invisible weight pressing down on the hearts of all who lived there. The first sign of misfortune was subtle. Tracks of deer vanished where hunters had expected to find them. Fish no longer darted in the rivers, shallows. The earth itself seemed restless, and Takaya felt the tension like a blade pressing against his chest. He walked among the villagers, sensing their unease. Women whispered in the huts, elders frowned more than usual, and the children's laughter, once bright and unbroken, carried an edge of worry. Takaya's heart sank as he realized that nature was responding to his absence during the sacred hunt. His choice to follow Ehana had disrupted more than just a ceremony. It had rippled outward, touching every branch, every stream, and every living thing that relied on the delicate harmony of the forest. The crops in the communal fields, usually thriving under careful care, wilted. Corn leaves curled, beans shriveled, and the squash vines sagged with an unfamiliar weakness. The elders called for a council, murmuring prayers and performing cleansing rituals to coax the spirits back into balance. Takaya stood at the edge of the circle, shame and fear gnawing at him. Weya placed a hand on his shoulder. The spirits speak through nature, Takaya. You have felt their message. You must be ready to bear what comes. As he grappled with guilt, word came that Ehana's tribe had grown suspicious. Whispers traveled through the forest like wind through the pines. Rumors of a secret union between the young warriors of rival tribes. Ehana's father, a respected chieftain, had begun questioning the loyalties of his own people. For every stolen moment of joy, there was now the heavy weight of distrust settling between the tribes. And then there was Kichi, the cunning warrior, long waiting for an opportunity, had begun weaving shadows into the tribe's fabric. He whispered doubts into the ears of hunters and elders alike, sowing fear that Takaya's absence during the sacred hunt was not a matter of love, but of negligence. Kichi's influence spread like ivy, subtle but suffocating, and Takaya could see the seeds of betrayal taking root. One evening, desperate for guidance, Takaya ventured to the sacred grove, where the forest and river intertwined. He knelt by the oldest pine, its roots deep as memory itself, and closed his eyes, seeking the presence of the Great Spirit. The air thickened, and Takaya felt the familiar hum of unseen eyes. A vision began to unfold before him, as vivid and compelling as the daylight world. In the vision, he saw children he had not yet met, descendants of his love and his bloodline. They played beneath the trees, laughing and free, but shadows moved behind them. Some children grew pale, their eyes dull, and sickness gripped them in the middle of play. He saw other children stumble and fall, faces etched with fear, as arguments and mistrust flared among the adults around them. The vision moved swiftly, carrying him forward through generations, echoes of his choice repeating, affecting those he had not yet met, shaping a legacy of vulnerability and sorrow. Takaya's knees hit the earth as the vision receded, leaving him breathless. "Great Spirit," he whispered, "have mercy on those yet unborn. What can I do to protect them from the shadows I have brought into the world?" The wind stirred in answer, carrying whispers that only he could understand. Balance must be restored. Sacrifice must be accepted. The heart may choose, but the consequences endure. Even as he struggled to comprehend the weight of the vision, word reached him that a mysterious sickness had begun affecting children in both tribes. Fever, coughing, and lethargy appeared in small clusters, seemingly without cause. Mothers clutched their babies close, eyes wide with fear, and elders shook their heads in sorrow, unable to discern the source. Takaya felt the sting of guilt. Like ice in his veins, his choice to follow Ehana had set in motion ripples he could not control. One night, as he walked past the huts to offer aid, he heard a small voice calling from the shadows. He paused, recognizing the tremor of fear and innocence in its tone. A child, barely 7, emerged from the doorway, eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "Father," the child whispered, trembling, "why did you leave us?" The words struck Takaya like a spear. He knelt, heartbreaking, feeling the truth of the prophecy pressing down on him. Love had guided his steps, but in doing so, he had abandoned duties that could not be ignored, duties that now bore a cost no one had anticipated. Every fevered cough, every wilted leaf, every shadowed glance among the villagers was a reminder. Choices of the heart were not without price. He took the child's hand gently, brushing damp hair from their forehead. "I made a choice," he said, voice choked with emotion. "I chose love, but the spirits are showing me that every path comes with its shadow. I cannot undo what has been set in motion, but I will stay, and I will fight to protect you, no matter what comes." The child nodded slowly, eyes wide, but fear still lingered. Takaya stood and gazed into the darkened forest, toward the river that led to Ahiana. The tension between love and duty tightened like a noose around his chest. Every decision now carried weight beyond his own life, stretching forward across generations. In the quiet hours, as he returned to the sacred circle of the village, he could hear the soft murmurs of other children and parents alike. Some cried in sleep, some whispered to each other, fearful of the sickness and the strange, inexplicable events surrounding it. And deep within, Takaya knew the shadows he had glimpsed in his vision were only the beginning. The red hawk's cry, once a herald of prophecy, now felt like the wolf's warning echoed in his mind. Balance is fragile, easily broken, and rarely restored without sacrifice. Kichi's plotting continued, unseen but persistent, and the whispers of the forest carried a chilling reminder. Choices of the heart, while sacred and true, could ripple through time, touching lives that had yet to draw breath. Takaya's chest tightened as he entered his dwelling, haunted by the child's question. He knelt in the soft candlelight, pressing his palms against the earth as he had during the vision. "Great Spirit," he whispered, "grant me the strength to bear this burden. Guide me to restore what has been broken, before the shadows claim more than just me." And in that silence, a small, trembling voice lingered in his memory. "Father, why did you leave us?" Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, carrying the faintest echo of the red hawk's cry. Takaya realized, with a sinking heart, that the consequences of his choice were no longer distant. They had begun to touch the lives of his children, and perhaps the generations to come. Night fell over the whispering pines like a velvet cloak, draping the village in shadow. Takaya left the huts quietly, slipping through the misty forest toward the sacred grove. His heart pounded with a mixture of fear and resolve. The red hawk's prophecy, the wolf's warning, the visions of suffering children, all pressed upon him like stones. He needed guidance, clarity, and the strength to bear the consequences of his choice. He needed to confront the Great Spirit. By the riverbank, he built a small fire, its flames flickering like tiny suns against the darkness. Takaya inhaled deeply, grounding himself in the scent of pine and damp earth, then closed his eyes. He offered a prayer. "Great Spirit, hear me, show me the path. Teach me what courage truly demands, and what love truly costs." As the moon rose, silver light dancing across the water, the forest began to shift. Shadows lengthened and deepened, whispering voices brushing against his mind like wind through the pines. Suddenly, the fire's flames stretched taller, glowing unnaturally, and Takaya felt himself lifted from the physical world, drifting into a realm beyond sight and sound. The vision began. He stood in a place where the sky burned with colors, unseen by mortal eyes, and the earth beneath him pulsed with life. Animal guides appeared: an elk with antlers shining like crystal, a bear with eyes of molten gold, a fox whose fur shimmered with firelight. Each animal bowed their head in greeting, offering silent wisdom. The ancestors arrived next, their forms luminous and shifting, voices blending like wind through the trees. Takaya saw his parents, their faces proud yet sorrowed, the elders who had guided him, and warriors who had walked paths of courage long before him. They did not speak immediately, but their presence demanded reverence and reflection. Takaya, the voice of Weya, echoed in the vision, amplified and hollow. You have chosen love, and yet the world will demand sacrifice. Are you ready to bear the weight of all consequences? Takaya nodded, voice trembling. I do not know if I am strong enough, but I must try. A whirlwind rose around him, elemental forces challenging his resolve. Fire crackled along invisible walls, wind tore at his limbs, and the earth beneath him shifted like rolling waves. The spirits tested him, each trial reflecting a part of his moral struggle, the temptation to abandon duty for passion, the fear of failing those who depend on him, and the need to accept that love and responsibility often conflict. And then came the trickster spirit, a being of shifting shape and mischievous eyes, offering visions of a world where consequences did not exist. In this illusion, Takaya saw a life with Aihana untouched by guilt, where both tribes prospered, regardless of his choices, and the Red Hawk never cried in warning. All could be yours, the trickster whispered, voice like wind through dry leaves. Take love freely, fear nothing, the cost is nothing. Takaya hesitated, heart yearning for the ease and joy the vision promised. For a moment, the temptation felt irresistible, but the elk spoke silently in his mind. Nothing in the world exists without balance. The bear's golden eyes locked with his own, conveying strength and warning. Every act of the heart ripples through life. He shook his head, refusing the illusion. Love without consequence is not love, is illusion, he said aloud. The trickster laughed, a sound like breaking branches, and dissolved into a swirl of shadows. Takaya felt the full weight of the choice he had made, yet also a renewed clarity. Courage is not the absence of fear, and sacrifice is inseparable from love. The Great Spirit appeared then, a presence felt more than seen, radiating warmth and authority. It showed Takaya the beauty of love, the joy of connection, the spark of intimacy, the laughter shared under the sun and stars, but it also displayed the cost of disobedience, shadows falling over the innocent, sickness and hardship touching those he loved, imbalance spreading across the land. The lesson was clear. Every action carries consequence. Every desire exacts a price. Takaya fell to his knees in reverence. I understand, he whispered. I see the cost, I see the duty, and I see the love. Help me walk the path without losing either spirit or honor. As the first light of dawn crept through the trees of the vision, Takaya felt himself drawn back to the mortal world. He awoke by the river, drenched in sweat, chest heaving, hair plastered to his forehead. The forest around him was quiet, the mist curling in silver fingers over the river's surface. The prophecy, the wolf, the trickster, they all echoed in his heart, the weight of destiny pressing against his ribs. He rose slowly, feeling the earth beneath his bare feet, and listened. A raven cawed from the branches above, its call sharp and deliberate. Then it swooped down, landing gracefully at his feet, and dropped a single black feather into the soft soil. Takaya bent to pick it up, fingers brushing against the smooth quill, and felt a shiver run through him. The raven's eyes glimmered with uncanny intelligence, and Takaya knew the feather was more than a gift, it was an omen. Death and rebirth, endings and beginnings, warning and promise, intertwined in its sleek, dark form. The vision had been a trial, a test of courage, but the feather reminded him that the journey was far from over. Consequences awaited, both cruel and illuminating, and the path ahead would demand even more of him than the night-long trial had revealed. Takaya pressed the feather to his chest, inhaling the crisp dawn air, and whispered a silent vow. I will honor love, I will honor duty, I will face what comes, no matter the shadow it casts. And as he stood, the first rays of the sun glinted through the mist, catching the black feather in his hand. A distant cry of a hawk split the morning air, and Takaya knew the prophecy was alive, echoing through the generations, guiding and warning him with every beat of the red hawk's wings. The raven took flight, disappearing into the sky, leaving Takaya with the feather at his feet, a symbol of death, rebirth, and the trials still to come. His heart beat with both hope and fear, knowing the consequences of love and duty were only beginning. The valley was heavy with unease. Even the wind seemed cautious, rustling the whispering pines with a measured whisper. As if carrying secrets, it dared not speak aloud. Takaya walked among the villagers, feeling eyes on him at every turn. Whispers followed him like shadows, a quiet chorus of doubt and suspicion. Kichi moved among them, with a predator's grace, words slipping from his tongue like smooth stones. "Our warrior," he said to the hunters, "has chosen the path of desire over duty. He abandoned the sacred hunt when the tribe needed him most. Can we trust a man who puts his heart above the Great Spirit?" The elders, already unsettled by failed hunts and wilting crops, frowned deeply. Weio's hand rested on Takaya's shoulder, firm yet somber. "The boy is young, but every choice carries consequence," Weia said softly. Yet even Weia could not mask the uncertainty in his eyes. The seed of doubt Kichi had planted was growing quickly. By mid-morning, the tribal council convened in the ceremonial circle. Elder voices rose in concern, blending with murmurs of the gathered villagers. "Neglect of duty is dishonor," one elder said. "To abandon a sacred hunt is to invite imbalance and misfortune." Another added, "If the Great Spirit is angered, what will become of our people?" Takaya stood at the edge of the circle, hands clenched at his sides. Shame and guilt gnawed at him. He had chosen love, but he had not foreseen how deeply it would ripple through the lives of those around him. Each word of condemnation felt like a blade. The echoes of the Red Hawk's prophecy and the wolf's warning pressed in on him. Ahiana arrived at the council, unexpectedly, stepping lightly across the clearing, her eyes dark with worry. "Takaya has not acted from malice," she said, voice steady but urgent. "He followed the heart, yes, but the spirits themselves may punish him if the tribe turns fully against him. You must consider that balance is more delicate than human pride." Kichi's smile was thin, almost invisible. "We do not act lightly, Ayana," he said smoothly, "but the boy's choices have already endangered all of us. If the spirits are displeased, it is his doing." Takaya felt the weight of Ayana's words settle on him. The spirits could indeed turn against him if human judgment condemned him first. Every faltering hunt, every crop that wilted, every sigh of fear from a child, all reflected the consequences of his heart-driven choice. He bowed his head, swallowing the knot of fear and guilt. Later that evening, as Takaya wandered the village outskirts, he discovered a grave betrayal. The sacred drum, used in ceremonies to honor the Great Spirit and ancestors, had been removed from its place. Its polished wood, etched with symbols of protection and balance, now lay absent, leaving the ceremonial lodge eerily hollow. "The drum," Takaya whispered, fingers brushing the air where it had rested. He understood immediately. The theft was symbolic, a rupture of balance, and an act designed to fracture the tribe's faith. Without the drum, rituals would falter, offerings would go unheard, and the community's connection to the Great Spirit would weaken. He sensed Kit's hand in this. The rival warrior's cunning was subtle but effective. Each move calculated to isolate Takaya, erode trust, and ensure the prophecy's shadow fell ever heavier on the young warrior's shoulders. Ahiana met him by the river that night, her eyes wide with concern. "The spirits are restless," she said, voice low. "They feel the imbalance, Takaya. Every act of betrayal, every seed of doubt, it feeds their anger. You must tread carefully. Kichi is not just undermining your honor. He is provoking the Great Spirit itself." Takaya nodded, chest tight. "I never imagined love could lead to this," he said, staring at the rippling water. I thought I could follow my heart and honor both the bond and the tribe, but the consequences are more than I can bear. Ayana's hand rested on his arm, grounding him. You are not alone, she whispered, but vigilance is needed. Kichi's shadow is long, and his ambition is boundless. You must be ready for the storm he is preparing. As night deepened, Takaya returned to the grove where he had first spoken with the Great Spirit. The forest was unnaturally silent, the usual chorus of crickets and owls absent, as though the land itself held its breath. And then he heard a deep, resonant beat echoing through the trees. His heart stopped. The sacred drum. It should have been gone, hidden, removed, but now its rhythm pulsed on its own, carried by unseen hands or spirits. Each beat vibrated through the earth, through his bones, and through the valley, a foreboding signal of calamity. The forest seemed to darken further, shadows stretching long and menacing across the moss-covered floor. Takaya knelt, head bowed, hands pressed to the ground. The drum's voice was not merely sound, it was a warning, a call, a reflection of the imbalance his choices and Kichi's machinations had wrought. The Great Spirit's presence felt heavy, judging, waiting. From the edge of the grove, he glimpsed movement shadows flickering among the trees. Kichi, or perhaps something darker, observed him from the cover of night, waiting to act. Takaya felt the weight of inevitability pressing down. The drum's beat signaled more than disturbance, it heralded impending doom, a storm of violence, betrayal, and spiritual unrest. The young warrior pressed his palms to the earth again, murmuring a prayer for guidance. Great Spirit, give me the strength to endure, protect the children, restore the balance. I will not falter, even as shadows rise. And as the drum continued its relentless rhythm, the whispers of the forest carried a chill. Kichi's plot was no longer hidden, only unseen, and Takaya knew the night would bring confrontation, one that might claim more than honor. It could claim life itself. The sacred drum beat through the night, its voice carried by the forest, echoing like the pulse of destiny. Somewhere in the shadows, Kichi plotted a violent act to cement Takaya's downfall. The valley held its breath, and the spirits stirred as a storm of betrayal, consequence, and prophecy readied itself to strike. The morning air carried a heaviness unlike any Takaya had ever felt. The wind whispered urgent warnings through the whispering pines, rustling the forest as if it knew calamity was coming. From the eastern ridge, a faint smoke rose, curling toward the sky like the fingers of a spirit reaching for the heavens. Takaya's heart sank as he ran toward the village, the drum beats from the sacred grove echoing still in his mind. By the time he reached the edge of the valley, the disaster revealed itself in all its fury. A forest fire had ignited on the high ridges, flames racing down the slopes with terrifying speed, devouring dry underbrush and threatening the villages below. The smoke thickened, burning eyes and lungs, turning day into a twilight of orange haze. Takaya's tribe scrambled in panic. Parents shouted for children, hunters tried to control the chaos, and elders barked commands through the choking smoke. But even in the confusion, Takaya saw the truth. The disaster was not merely chance. The imbalance his love had caused, the neglect of duty, the rupture of sacred rhythm, these forces had angered nature itself. He raced into the inferno, heart pounding. Every leap over burning roots, every dive past falling branches, felt guided by instinct and desperation. He located the children first, huddled near the riverbank, tears streaking soot-stained faces, fear and confusion etched deep. "Stay close to me," he shouted, scooping them into his arms, one after another, feeling the heat singe his skin and the smoke choke his lungs. Courage burned within him, but so did helplessness. As Takaya guided the last child to safety, a wave of fire leaped from the forest edge, cutting off the path back to the village. The forest, once a place of life and harmony, had transformed into a realm of chaos. reflecting the imbalance his heart-driven choice had wrought. He glanced up at the sky and saw the red hawk circling, wings spread wide, its cry piercing through the smoke. It was no longer a herald of prophecy, was mourning, a spiritual witness to loss and suffering. In the midst of the chaos, a chilling realization struck him. Hyena was gone. The forest seemed to swallow her from sight, as if the flames themselves had claimed her. Perhaps she had been caught in the fire's path. Perhaps the imbalance had taken her to realms beyond mortal reach. Takaya's chest tightened, grief twisting through him like a living thing. Courage alone could not shield him from the consequences of love and desire. He continued to lead children to safety, moving from one cluster of terrified villagers to another, but he could not save all. Some were too slow, trapped by flames or falling trees. Screams echoed through the valley, heartbreaking and raw, marking the first irreversible losses of his decision. Takaya fell to his knees by the river, tears streaming freely, smoke stinging his eyes. He felt the weight of generations pressing down. The price of a choice made in the name of love, now carved in the lives of the innocent. The fire's rage had consumed the high ridges, leaving a charred scar across the forest. The villages were spared the worst, thanks to Takaya's courage and quick action, but the damage was undeniable. Crops destroyed, shelters burned, and the delicate ecosystem scarred beyond immediate repair. The elders convened again, their faces grave. Whispers of blame and prophecy carried on the wind, mingling with cries of relief and grief. Guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. He had acted heroically, yet he understood, with a clarity sharpened by loss, that courage could not undo consequences. The sacrifices demanded by the heart were irreversible, and the burden would stretch far beyond his lifetime. Every child saved was a miracle, every loss a reminder of imbalance. As dusk fell, Takaya walked to the edge of the burned forest. The air was still thick with smoke, carrying the scent of ash and charred pine. From the shadows, the red hawk returned, gliding low over the valley. Its wings were heavy, and its cry now resonated with sorrow, echoing across the blackened earth. Takaya lifted his gaze, feeling the silent judgment of the spirits upon him, mourning alongside the bird that had once foretold his destiny. And then, faintly, a child's voice cut through the ruin. Takaya turned toward the remnants of the village, seeing a small figure standing near the riverbank, trembling. "Father, will we ever be safe again?" The child asked, voice trembling, with fear and exhaustion. The question struck Takaya with the force of a spear. He knelt beside the child, placing a protective arm around them. "We will endure," he said, though his voice wavered. "The Great Spirit tests us all, and balance is never without trial. But we will stand. We will rebuild." Even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The trials were only beginning. The consequences of love and choice would ripple across time, touching the lives of children yet unborn. The storm of fire, the mourning red hawk, the child's fearful plea, they were only the first echoes of a future shaped by his decision. That night, the forest was eerily quiet. Takaya remained awake, tending to those injured and comforting those who had lost family members. Ash fell like snow, coating hair and skin with a gray reminder of the fire's devastation. Somewhere deep within the charred hills, shadows moved, predators stirred, spirits whispered, and the trickster's presence lingered, watching the outcomes of his deceit unfold. Takaya understood now that courage alone could not shield him from the price of the heart. Sacrifice was intertwined with desire. Love exacted a toll, and the consequences were both visible and invisible, immediate and generational. Every step he took, every decision he made henceforth, would ripple across the valley, the tribes, and the lineage of his children. The red hawk's cry echoed again, as if in affirmation, a mournful yet eternal reminder. Takaya lifted his hands to the sky, offering prayer and repentance in equal measure. "Great Spirit, I see the cost. I feel the weight. Guide me through what comes, and grant the strength to protect what I love, even if it is never enough." And as he stood amidst the ruins, the child's trembling voice echoed in his heart, mingling with the hawk's mournful call, "Father, will we ever be safe again?" The forest smoldered under the first stars of night. Takaya's arms ached from saving the children, his heart ached from loss, and above, the red hawk circled, watching. Somewhere in the shadows, Kichi's plots continued, and Takaya knew the next chapter would demand courage, cunning, and a confrontation with the consequences that could shape generations. Years passed like the steady flow of the river through the whispering pines, carrying memories and lessons that no storm could wash away. Takaya, once a young warrior torn between heart and duty, now walked with the slow, deliberate pace of age, his hair streaked with silver, his shoulders heavy with the weight of consequences. The valley had healed and part, trees had regrown where fire had burned. Streams sparkled once more under sunlight, but the scars of imbalance lingered, both in the land and in the hearts of those who lived upon it. The descendants of Takaya's choice bore subtle marks of hardship. Families whispered of illnesses that seemed to flare without cause, of sudden misfortune, and of dreams haunted by the echo of the red hawk's cry. Mistrust had taken root, not as blame toward Takaya alone, but as a cautious respect for the fragility of harmony between human desire and the natural order. Parents taught their children the story of the warrior who had chosen love over duty, warning them that every choice carried consequences far beyond one's understanding. Takaya spent hours wandering the sacred grove, where the wind played through the pines like the soft voice of memory. The sacred drum, now restored, lay in its place, yet its rhythm carried a reminder. Balance could be achieved, but it must always be nurtured. Takaya would sit by the drum, hands resting on its polished surface, feeling the pulse of generations reverberate through it. Each beat was a whisper of warning, a song of hope, a call to remember that love and duty are entwined in delicate, demanding ways. Ahayana's memory lingered like morning mist. Though her fate remained partly shrouded in mystery, her spirit seemed to guide him, and the bond they shared transcended the years. Takaya's children had grown into adults, wise yet cautious, shaped by the trials their father had endured and the ancestral teachings he had passed down. Yet he saw, with a quiet pang, that echoes of his own struggle flickered in their eyes. The same tension between the heart's desire and the tribe's expectations. One evening Takaya's vision came unbidden. He saw the next generation, children of his grandchildren, moving through the forest, laughing, exploring, yet touched by the shadows of imbalance. Some stumbled, uncertain, others paused at the sound of distant cries or the rustle of unseen wings, as if they sensed the weight of prophecy resting upon them. The vision made him both mournful and vigilant, a reminder that cycles of choice and consequence stretch beyond one lifetime. The elders, now aged like Takaya, began a slow restoration of rituals, reinforcing respect for the Great Spirit and the wisdom of the forest. A ceremony at the sacred grove was planned to honor the lost, to heal the lingering unrest, and to remind the tribe of the cost and necessity of balance. Takaya stood at the edge of the gathering, watching as his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren joined the circle, hands raised in prayer, hearts open to ancestral guidance. The drum's rhythmic pulse rose, steady and strong, calling the spirits to witness and to grant favor. Smoke from burning sage and sweetgrass curled upward, carrying prayers of remembrance and hope. Takaya's eyes closed as he felt the presence of the Great Spirit, Ahayana, and all who had been touched by the choices of the past. The valley seemed to breathe in unison with the drum, the pines swaying gently, the river rippling softly, acknowledging the restoration of balance, even if only partial. Yet even in this moment of communal reverence, Takaya sensed the persistence of prophecy. He glimpsed a young descendant, a boy not yet 10, eyes wide with curiosity and intensity, standing apart from the circle. Something stirred in his gaze, a quiet tug toward the same crossroads that had defined Takaya's life. The boy's hands clenched at his sides, his small chest rising and falling with an awareness far beyond his years. Takaya's heart tightened. The cycles of choice, consequence, and legacy were alive and unbroken. The red hawk's cry seemed to echo faintly in the grove, a whisper carried on the wind. Balance must always be honored. Love must always be tempered with duty, and the heart's path is never without shadow. As the ritual drew to a close, the tribe offered gratitude to the spirits and ancestors. Candles flickered along the circle's edge, and Takaya felt the soft warmth of firelight across his aged face. The children laughed quietly now, soothed by the rhythms of ceremony, but the memory of loss, the lessons of imbalance, and the cautionary tales of the past remained etched into their spirits. Takaya knelt by the drum one final time that evening, laying his hands gently on its surface. "Great Spirit," he whispered, "I have walked the path as best I could. I have loved, I have erred, I have suffered. May the generations yet to come learn from our choices, and may they walk with courage, wisdom, and respect for the balance you have entrusted to us." Above him, the red hawk glided silently across the twilight sky, wings broad, cry echoing like a timeless hymn. Its presence was both a reminder and a blessing. Sorrow, love, duty, and consequence intertwined forever. Takaya rose slowly, feeling the weight of his years, but also the quiet pride that comes from survival, guidance, and the hope of renewal. As the tribe dispersed, the young descendant lingered, eyes lifted to the sky, feeling a tug in his heart, a silent calling echoing the prophecy that had shaped Takaya's life. In that moment, the cycle began anew, whispering of choices to come, challenges yet unseen, and the enduring bond between love, duty, and the spirits of the forest. The morning sun filtered gently through the whispering pines, casting golden streaks over the valley. Takaya, now older and wiser, walked alongside the young ones of the tribe, his eyes soft but discerning. Each step he took was deliberate, carrying the weight of memory, loss, and hard-earned understanding. The events of his life, the choices of the heart, the trials of fire and imbalance were etched deep within him. Now, they served as lessons to be passed down. He gathered the children beneath the sacred grove, the ancient drum at the center of their circle. Its polished surface reflected the morning light, a symbol of both history and continuity. "Listen well," Takaya said, voice calm yet commanding. "The spirits, the animals, the forest, they are our guides. Every choice we make carries consequence. Courage is not the absence of fear, nor is love free from responsibility. Balance is the path we must walk every day." He spoke of the red hawk, whose cries had first heralded prophecy, whose wings had soared above misfortune and triumph alike. "The hawk reminds us," Takaya continued, "that what we do echoes far beyond ourselves. Your actions touch the earth, the rivers, and the hearts of those who come after you. Never take the gifts of the Great Spirit lightly." As he instructed, visions of Ayana appeared not in flesh, but in spirit. In dreams, whispers, and subtle signs, she guided the children as she had once guided him. A flicker of light over a river, a soft rustle in the pines, a voice in a dream reminding them of patience and love tempered with respect. Ayana's presence became a gentle mentor to all, showing that while the heart may lead, wisdom must follow. Meanwhile, Kichi faced reckoning. The trickster spirit that had guided his ambition now twisted against him. Ancestors he had ignored, the elders he had deceived, and spirits of the natural world confronted him in vision and waking moments alike. Fire and wind swept through the dreamscape, shadows lengthening and contracting with the weight of ancestral judgment. Kichi saw clearly, for the first time, the suffering his selfish choices had caused the famine, the sickness of children, the fear and unrest he had sown. I sought honor, Kichi whispered in a trembling voice, yet all I wrought was pain. The ancestors remained unyielding, showing him scenes of loss and sorrow, guiding him toward understanding that ambition, untethered from responsibility, leads only to ruin. And in this vision, he saw Takaya not as rival or obstacle, but as the embodiment of balance, love, and courage, tempered by consequence. Takaya continued mentoring, blending storytelling with ritual. The young ones learned to honor the sacred drum, to respect the animals of the forest, and to approach the rivers, trees, and winds with gratitude. He spoke of mistakes his own Kichis, and the lessons carried through generations, ensuring the children understood that wisdom grows from reflection, courage, and the humility to accept consequence. He taught them the sacred hunt, not merely as a test of skill, but as a spiritual practice, reminding them that every arrow, every step, every act of survival was a dialogue with nature. They learned that harmony required awareness, empathy, and respect, that the heart's desire must always be measured against the good of the tribe and the guidance of the Great Spirit. In quiet moments, Takaya would walk alone through the forest, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant cry of the red hawk. Memories of Ayana, the fire, the stolen drum, and the children he had saved pressed upon him, but no longer as burdens alone. They were teachers, markers of the cost of love and desire, and reminders of the eternal dialogue between heart, duty, and consequence. The tribe, watching Takaya's example, gradually renewed their respect for ritual, for sacred objects, and for the lessons carried in the whispers of the ancestors. The forest itself seemed to respond, flourishing anew, the river singing over smooth stones, and wildlife returning with cautious trust. Balance, fragile yet enduring, returned to the valley. Takaya paused near the edge of the grove at dusk, watching the young ones practice their chants and dances. Their laughter mingled with the rustling pines, carrying hope across the valley. The drumbeats echoed, steady and strong, calling the spirits to witness the enduring cycle of learning, responsibility, and love. He closed his eyes, hands resting lightly on the drum, and whispered a reflection of a lifetime. Love teaches us courage, duty teaches us restraint, and every choice, no matter how personal, ripples across generations. Our hearts may guide us, but our wisdom must temper our desires, for the spirits watch, and the earth remembers. Above, the red hawk cried once more, circling against the horizon. Its wings cut the sky like a living reminder that the watch of the spirits is eternal. Takaya felt both reassurance and reverence, understanding that life's lessons never end, flow through the generations, shaping children, elders, and all who walk the path of heart and duty. The final rays of sunlight fell upon the grove as Takaya rose, his gaze lingering on the young ones, who looked toward him with curiosity and awe. He knew that the prophecy's echoes would continue, that cycles of love, sacrifice, and consequence were eternal, and yet, with courage, wisdom, and guidance, each generation could face the future with hope and strength. As night settled over the valley, the red hawk's cry faded into the distance, but its presence lingered in the hearts of the tribe, silent, yet enduring, a reminder that the watch of the spirits is eternal, and that each child, each descendant, must choose wisely when the heart tugs against duty. The valley lay bathed in soft morning light, the mist curling gently among the whispering pines. Takaya, now bent with age but eyes still bright with the clarity of wisdom, sat beneath the sacred grove, the ancient drum resting before him. Around him, children gathered in eager curiosity, faces alive with the innocence of youth and the quiet hunger for stories of the past. Long ago, Takaya began, his voice steady but tinged with memory. The red hawk soared above these lands, carrying messages from the Great Spirit. It spoke of choices that would test the heart, duty, and the harmony of our people. He paused, letting the children feel the weight of the grove. the wind moving softly through the trees, carrying the scent of sage and pine. He told them of his youth, of the love that stirred his heart for Ahana, a woman from beyond the tribe, and of the duty he bore as a warrior of the Whispering Pines. He spoke of fire, loss, and the storms that had tested both heart and spirit. Each story was layered with caution, but also with the tenderness of remembrance, the recognition that love, though sacred, carries consequence when untethered from responsibility. The children listened in rapt silence, some leaning forward, as if drawn into the memories themselves. Takaya spoke not to frighten, but to teach, not to burden, but to instill reverence for the threads of life that connect hearts, spirits, and generations. The children we save, he said softly, the bonds we honor, the forest and rivers we walk upon, all are gifts. The spirits watch, they remember. Our choices echo long after we have passed. He gestured toward the trees, the river, and the hills beyond. Even love, though powerful, must respect the balance of all life. And the spirits, they guide us when we falter. As Takaya spoke, a gentle wind rustled the branches overhead, and for a moment, the red hawk appeared, circling high above. Its cry pierced the valley, solemn and timeless. The children gasped, some pointing upward in wonder. Takaya smiled. See, even now, the spirits remind us that vigilance is eternal. Ahayana watches, and the children of our ancestors, lost or saved, protect this land. Balance is never permanent, it must be nurtured every day. The elders of the tribe, standing in the shadows of the grove, nodded in quiet approval. They had watched Takaya grow from a young warrior to the wise elder before them. They knew the trials he endured, the fires, the storms, the weight of prophecy, and understood that his stories were more than cautionary tales. They were lessons etched into the valley itself, in the rivers, the pines, the drumbeats, and the cries of the red hawk. Kichi's shadow, long and cunning in its time, had faded with age and spiritual reckoning. The trickster spirits and ancestors he had ignored in youth had long since taught him humility, and the tribe had foregone vengeance, embracing forgiveness as part of their renewed harmony. Balance had returned, but not without the imprint of history, the echoes of choices made in love and in folly. Takaya reached down, running fingers across the drum's surface. Each groove, each mark, told stories of victory, grief, and endurance. He tapped lightly, producing a rhythm that resonated with the pulse of the valley itself. The children mimicked him, their small hands striking the drum with tentative reverence. The sound rose, steady and warm, calling the spirits and ancestors to witness the ongoing life of the tribe. Remember, Takaya said, voice low but firm, forgiveness and vigilance must walk together. We honor those who came before us, but we also honor those who come after. Our hearts may choose, but the spirits remember. His eyes, clouded with age, but bright with understanding, swept across the grove. Do not take lightly the paths you follow, nor the love you embrace. Both can heal, and both can wound. Balance is the greatest teacher of all. Outside the grove, nature responded. Birds sang among the pines, their melodies weaving with the rustle of leaves. Streams flowed freely, sparkling in the sun, carrying life to the valley below. Wildflowers dotted the hills, their colors vibrant against the green canvas of the forest floor. The sacred grove thrived, tended by hands young and old, a testament to resilience, remembrance, and the lessons of generations. As the story ended, the children remained quiet, the weight of understanding settling upon them. Some glanced upward, eyes catching the shadow of the red hawk once more. A sense of awe hung in the air, tempered by the knowledge that the choices they would one day make would carry the echoes of Takaya's life, the love of Ihana, and the watchful eyes of the Great Spirit. Takaya rose slowly, leaning on his staff, and looked over the valley one last time before nightfall. He felt a gentle warmth, a whisper of presence, and knew that the spirits of the lost and the living were together in harmony. Forgiveness had mended hearts, courage had preserved life, and wisdom had guided the tribe to a new chapter. Yet, as always, vigilance remained necessary. The Red Hawk cried again, a single, soaring note that cut across the valley, echoing into the mountains beyond. Takaya closed his eyes, breathing in the scent of pine, the murmur of the river, and the soft cadence of the drum. The heart may choose, he whispered, but the spirits remember. For generations. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long golden shadows over the valley. Nature settled into peaceful rhythm. Birds returned to their nests, streams shimmered beneath the fading light, and the sacred grove stood vibrant and enduring. Takaya felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. The story of love, choice, consequence, and redemption would live on, not just in words, but in the lives, actions, and hearts of all who walked the land. In the distance, a young child lifted their gaze skyward, catching the silhouette of the Red Hawk once more. The cycle of guidance, vigilance, and balance continued. Eternal is the wind through the whispering pines, eternal is the echoes of the heart.